Welcome to...
Well, not in this specific way. That's what makes this paper stand out. They saw this gold mine of documented reasoning in everyday clinical reports.
So enter ChestX-Reasoner. It's a multimodal large language model, an MLM, but specifically for radiology. And the key thing, the real innovation here, seems to be how it's trained.
Yes, using something they call process supervision. They're essentially mining those clinical reports to teach the AI the process of reasoning, not just the final outcome.
Okay, walk us through that. How does the training actually work?
It's a two-stage thing. First, there's supervised fine-tuning, or SFT. Here, they train the AI using both the final diagnoses from reports and the reasoning steps they've extracted. So it sees the problem and the worked-out solution, basically.
Right, like showing your work in math class.
Sort of, yeah. But then comes the second stage, which is, I think, really novel. It's reinforcement learning, RL, but with what they call process rewards.
Process rewards. So it's not just about getting the diagnosis right at the end.
Exactly. The model gets rewarded, you could say, for generating reasoning steps that actually match up with the clinical standards and logic found in those original reports. It's rewarding the thinking along the way.
That makes a lot of sense. It encourages the AI to follow a clinically valid path.
Mm-hmm. And this brings up the practical question. How do you actually get these reasoning steps, these chains of thought, out of the reports?
Yeah, are they manually labeling thousands of reports? That sounds incredibly time-consuming.
Well, the paper argues that the reports themselves are this amazing, scalable, and reliable source. It's real-world expert reasoning documented consistently.
So how do they extract it?
They developed a method to pull out question-answer pairs and the relevant clinical observations. It's like breaking down the radiologist's internal monologue into structured data points.
And they automated this somehow.
Yes, partly. They use tools like GPT-4o to help with tasks like generating good questions based on the report text and refining these reasoning chains so the AI can learn from them effectively.
Ah, okay. So using AI to help build better AI training data.
Right, and they argue this is way more scalable and reliable than, say, trying to get reasoning steps from another AI, which might hallucinate, or doing massive manual annotation efforts.
Okay, so they have this model, ChestX-Reasoner, trained to reason. But how do you actually test if it's reasoning well, like a real radiologist? You need a benchmark, right?
Exactly. And they built one. It's called RadRBench-CXR. It's a new benchmark designed specifically for chest X-ray visual question answering, but with a strong focus on evaluating the detailed diagnostic reasoning process.
And this benchmark is pretty substantial.
Oh, yeah. They mention 59,000 VQA samples backed by over 300,000 clinically validated reasoning steps. And they pulled this data from several big public data sets like MICCXR and ChexPert.
Wow. And they didn't just create the test data, they also created a new way to score it.
Correct. They introduced a metric called RadRScore. This isn't just about whether the final answer is right. It measures the quality of the reasoning.
How does it do that?
It looks at three main things. Factuality is the reasoning generated by the AI actually correct based on the ground truth report. Completeness, does it cover all the important clinical findings? And effectiveness are the steps it took actually necessary and relevant to get to the diagnosis.
Okay, factuality, completeness, effectiveness. That sounds comprehensive. So the big question, how did ChestX-Reasoner actually perform on this new benchmark using this new score?
The results look pretty impressive, actually. They compared it against other established medical AI models, things like RadFM-14B, Jaxigent-3B, and also against strong general-purpose vision language models like Elevin-XD, Qwen2VL, even GPT-4o.
Did it hold its own?
It did more than hold its own. ChestX-Reasoner significantly outperformed them, not just in getting the final diagnosis right, the outcome accuracy, but crucially in the reasoning ability measured by that RadR score.
Significantly. Can you give us a sense of the numbers?
Yeah, for reasoning ability, the RadR score, it was about 16% better than the next best medical MLLM, and almost 6% better than the best general MLM they tested. Compared to its own base model, before the reasoning training, it was an 18% jump.
16% better reasoning than the next best medical AI? That's a huge leap.
It really is. And the outcome accuracy, the final diagnosis, also improved noticeably. About 3.3% better than the top medical model, and a massive 24% better than the best general model. Again, 27% better than its base model.
Wow, 24% over the best general model. That really shows the value of domain-specific training, especially with this reasoning focus.
Definitely. And it's interesting, they noted another model, ChestX-3B, actually had pretty comparable outcome accuracy.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't necessarily better at just the final answer in all cases.
Right, ChestX was close on the final diagnosis accuracy. But, and this is key, ChestX-Reasoner showed much better reasoning scores according to RadScore. So it wasn't just getting the right answer, it was getting there through a more clinically sound and verifiable process.
That distinction seems really important for clinical trust in usability. It's not a black box.
Exactly. So to understand why it works so well, they did ablation studies, basically taking bits of their training process away to see what impact each part had.
Standard practice in ML research. What did they find? What was essential?
Well, the main finding was that both stages were critical. The supervised fine-tuning and the reinforcement learning with process rewards. You couldn't just do one or the other and get the same results.
So you needed both the initial grounding with examples and the reinforcement based on the reasoning process.
Yes. They also found something interesting about the SFT stage. Training initially on just the answers, the final diagnoses, actually helped align the model with the medical domain before they started layering in the complex reasoning training.
Like building a foundation first.
Kind of, yeah. And that process reward in the RL stage, the rewards specifically for good reasoning steps, that was absolutely vital. It was the key driver for significantly boosting the reasoning scores, and it also pushed the final diagnosis accuracy even higher.
So that specific reward mechanism for the process was really the secret sauce here.
It seems to be a major component, yes. Looking at the bigger picture, what this research really shows is a scalable way to create this kind of detailed reasoning data needed for more advanced medical AI.
Right. By leveraging the clinical reports that are already being generated every day.
Exactly. And models trained this way, like ChestX-Reasoner, tend to produce outputs that are much more interpretable, more understandable. You can follow the logic.
Which, as we said, is huge for adoption in healthcare. Doctors need to trust it to see how it reached a conclusion.
Absolutely. It aligns better with their own workflows. Plus, better reasoning and factuality means better auditability. You can check its work, which is critical for safety and accountability.
Makes sense. And do they see this approach extending beyond chest x-rays?
They suggest it could, yes. The principles could potentially be applied to other radiology modalities like CT scans or MRIs where similar structured reporting exists.
And what about future work? Where do they see this going?
They mention exploring even larger base models or perhaps models pre-trained specifically on vast amounts of medical data. And of course, refining the process supervision techniques themselves, maybe finding even better ways to extract and reward reasoning.
And importantly, they're sharing their work.
Yes, and this is great for the field. They've open sourced the code, the new RadRBench-CXR dataset and benchmark, and the ChestX-Reasoner models themselves. That really helps others build on this work.
That's fantastic. Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. The core insight here, the big takeaway from this deep dive, seems to be that teaching AI to reason step by step, like a radiologist, using process supervision from existing clinical reports, it leads to major gains.
Yeah, significant gains in both diagnostic accuracy and, maybe more importantly, in the interpretability and reliability of the AI's reasoning process.
And for you listening, this gives a real glimpse into where medical AI is heading. It's moving beyond just pattern matching towards systems that can demonstrate a more human-like analytical approach.
The potential impact is clear. More accurate AI, yes, but also AI that clinicians can understand, trust, and integrate more effectively into their practice. Ultimately, that should benefit patient care.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, this idea of process supervision, using documented expert workflows to train AI. Where else could that be applied?
That's a great question. Any field, really, where experts document their reasoning process, law, engineering, maybe even complex financial analysis. If the reasoning steps are recorded, perhaps this approach could work there too.
Definitely something to think about. And as you said, with the resources being open-sourced, researchers can start exploring those very possibilities. All right, that brings us to the end of this deep dive on ChestX-Reasoner. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for tuning in.